Look, $1 million is the universal retirement number, and we're going to get there in this video 3 completely different ways. The question is, how much would you actually need to invest every single day to make it happen in just 10 years? Most people guess way off, some way too high, some way too low. The real number is the kind of thing that changes how you think about almost every other financial decision you make. John's about to find that number 3 different ways. In this video, John's going to walk through 3 Fidelity index fund portfolios, one built for 30 years, one for 20, and one for 10. All 3 start from $0. All 3 end at the same $1 million finish line. For each portfolio, you'll see the exact funds, how much John puts into each one, and what the balance looks like year by year. And in the end, I'll show you how John reaches $1 million in just 10 years. But before we get to any of those daily numbers, let's start with the destination. Why $1 million, and what does it actually do for John once he gets there? Let's say John has nothing saved for retirement, not a single dollar. He works a regular job, makes a regular income, and until about a week ago, he was pretty sure retirement was something that happened to other people. Then he ran the numbers. The number everyone talks about is $1 million, and there's a reason for that. There's a retirement strategy called the 4% rule, backed by decades of research. The idea is simple. If John's got $1 million invested in an index fund portfolio, he can pull out 4% of it in his first year of retirement. That's $40,000, money he didn't have to work for. The next year, he adjusts slightly up for inflation, and he does it again, year after year. The reason this works without draining the account is because the market typically grows faster than 4%. So while John pulls out $40,000 a year to live on, the portfolio is still growing in the background. The principal usually stays intact, and in a lot of cases, the account actually keeps getting bigger while John spends from it. $40,000 a year breaks down to $3,333 going into John's account every single month, whether he works or not. Add the average Social Security check on top of that, about $2,076 a month, and John is looking at over $5,400 a month in retirement income. So $1 million is the destination. The question is how to get there from $0. And the answer depends almost entirely on something John hasn't decided yet: how much time he's willing to give it. And no matter which timeline John picks, the funds he uses are the same. So let's look at the 3 he's working with. The 3 funds John uses are all from Fidelity, one you've definitely heard of, one you might have heard of, and one that's about to surprise you. The first is FXAIX, the Fidelity 500 Index Fund. It's the biggest, most boring fund in John's portfolio, and that's exactly why it works. FXAIX tracks the S&P 500, the 500 largest companies in the U.S. So when you buy it, you're basically buying a slice of the American economy. Expense ratio 0.02%, which is about as close to free as investing gets. Over the last 10 years, it's averaged about 12.97% in annual share price appreciation. That's the foundation of every portfolio in this video. The second is FNCMX, the Fidelity NASDAQ Composite Index Fund. This one tilts towards growth. Instead of the S&P 500, it tracks the entire NASDAQ, heavier on tech, biotech, the kind of companies that grow faster but also swing harder. Over the last 10 years, FNCMX has averaged about 16.91% in annual appreciation. Higher reward, higher volatility. The bridge between safe and aggressive. And finally, there's FSELX, the Fidelity Select Semiconductors portfolio. This is the wild card. It only invests in semiconductor companies, the chip makers behind every phone, every laptop, every AI model. Over the last 10 years, FSELX has averaged 22.04% in annual appreciation. That's not a typo. It's also the riskiest fund in this video. Semiconductors are cyclical, which means when they crash hard. But for the right portfolio on the right timeline, FSELX is the engine that makes a 10-year retirement actually possible. Okay, so those are the three funds. Now let's see how John actually uses them. And he's going to start with the easiest version first. John starts with the longest timeline, 30 years. The reason is simple. When you've got that much time on your side, the math does most of the work for you, so the portfolio doesn't need to take much risk. Here's how it breaks down. 60% in FXAIX, 30% in FNCMX, and just 10% in FSELX. The broad market does the heavy lifting, the NASDAQ adds some growth, and the semiconductors are there for a small kick of upside without taking the whole portfolio off course. Blend these three together, and what you get is a portfolio with a 0.81% dividend yield, a 6.18% dividend growth rate, and an annual share price appreciation of just over 15%. The dividend yield isn't huge, but with 30 years to compound, it really doesn't need to be. The 15% appreciation is doing the heavy lifting. So how much does John actually have to invest to make this work? $6 a day. That's it. $6 a day, about the cost of a coffee and a bagel. And here's what happens to that $6 a day. By the end of year one, John's account sits at $2,190, basically what he put in. By year 10, that account is projected to be at $45,641. By year 20, it's $234,158, and by the end of year 30, the day John retires, that account is worth $1,004,150, a little over $1 million from $6 a day. And remember, at $1 million, that account starts paying him $3,333 every single month for the rest of his life if he uses the 4% rule, from a daily contribution, roughly the price of breakfast. But here's the part that matters most. Of the $1,004,150 in John's account, John actually contributed only $65,700 of his own money. The other $938,450 was the market doing what the market does over a long enough timeline. That's the thing about 30 years. You're not really the one building the wealth, you're just the one who showed up consistently. The compounding does all the work as long as you give it the time. But here's the thing. Most people watching this don't actually have 30 years to give. So what happens when you cut compounding's runway by a third? One plan down, two to go. And in the end, I'll show you how John reaches $1 million in just 10 years. But first, let's look at the 20-year portfolio. For this, we use the same three Fidelity funds, FXAIX, FNCMX, and FSELX. But now the weights shift. FXAIX drops from 60% down to 35%. FNCMX moves up to 40%. It's now the largest piece of the portfolio. And FSELX more than doubles from 10% to 25%. The reason is straightforward. With less time on his side, John needs the portfolio to grow faster. So the broad market shrinks and the more aggressive funds take over more of the workload. The new portfolio comes out to a 0.58% blended dividend yield, a 5.16% dividend growth rate, and an annual share price appreciation of about 16.81%. The yield drops, the dividend growth drops, but the appreciation climbs, which is exactly the trade John is making. Now, here's the daily number. $22 a day. Almost 4 times what the 30-year version cost. About $660 a month, $8,030 a year. That's still a doable number for a lot of people watching this. It's a couple of skipped restaurant meals, a smaller car payment, the gym membership, and the streaming subscriptions nobody really uses. But it's a real number. It demands a level of discipline that the 30-year plan doesn't. And here's how it grows. By the end of year 1, John's account is at $8,030. By year 10, it's projected to reach $180,684. And by year 20, exactly 10 years earlier than the first plan, that account hits $1,040,920. Same finish line, same $1 million portfolio. But notice what shifted. In the 30-year version, John contributed $65,700 of his own money. In the 20-year version, he contributed $160,600 of his own money, almost 2.5 times more. The market still does most of the work, but a much bigger share than the last version of that final $1 million came directly out of John's pocket. You bought 10 years of time back, and the price was about $95,000 extra out of your own paycheck. Now we get to the version most people clicked this video for. The 10-year version, the one the title promised, the one that turns $0 into $1,083,063 in just a decade. And yes, it's going to cost a lot more than $22 a day. But before I show you the math, I need to be honest with you for a second. The 10-year plan is the most aggressive version of this video, and it's not for everyone. Now let me show you the actual math so you can decide for yourself. Here's the portfolio. FXAIX drops all the way down to just 15%. FNCMX sits at 35%. And FSELX, the semiconductor fund, takes the largest position at 50%. Half the portfolio is now in a single sector. That's a concentrated bet on growth. The reason is the same reason that's been true the whole video. With only 10 years to compound, the broad market alone isn't going to get John to $1 million. The portfolio needs to grow at a rate that the broad market just can't deliver inside a decade, so the aggression level doubles. The blended numbers reflect that. The dividend yield drops to 0.34%. The dividend growth rate drops to 3.44%, but the share price appreciation jumps to 18.88%, the highest of all three portfolios. And the daily contribution? Brace yourself, $120 a day. $43,800 a year, about $3,650 a month, every month for 10 years straight. To pull that off, you're realistically looking at a household income somewhere around $120,000 a year, because below that, $3,650 a month into investments isn't a realistic ask after rent, groceries, and the rest of life. If that's not where you're at, the 30-year or 20-year plan is the version that best fits you. That's not a downgrade, that's just what math allows. But for the people who can do it, here's what it builds. By the end of year 1, John's account is at $43,800, basically all his own money since the market hasn't had time to do anything yet. By year 5, that account is projected to reach $320,168, with the market now adding meaningfully on top of John's daily contributions. And by the end of year 10, the account is worth $1,083,063. Of that $1,083,063 in John's account, John personally contributed $438,000. The market added $645,063. The market is still doing more of the work here, but barely. John writes a check for almost $500,000. The market still adds more, but the gap is almost gone. He's matching it nearly dollar for dollar. That's the price of cutting compounding's runway down to a decade. You can do it, but you're paying for the time you didn't give it. Now, here's where it gets interesting. 3 plans all landing at the exact same place, but the math behind each one tells a completely different story. Take a look at this side by side. Same destination at the top, $1 million in John's account, no matter which path he picks. But the road that actually matters is the one showing what John personally put in. In the 30-year version, John barely contributes anything, $65,700 over 3 decades, about the price of a new SUV, spread across 30 years. The market does almost all of the work for him. Cut the timeline in half, and John's contribution jumps to $160,600. Same destination, but a much bigger chunk of it now coming straight out of his pocket. Now look at the 10-year column. John writes a check for $438,000 over a decade, almost 7 times what the 30-year version cost him. Same finish line. Look at one more thing. For every dollar John puts in himself, the market hands him a different amount back, depending on the timeline. In the 30-year version, the market gives him about $14 for every dollar of his own. In the 20-year version, that shrinks to $5.50 for every dollar. And in the 10-year version, the market only gives him $1.50 per dollar he puts in. That's the trade. That's what this video is really about. Time isn't free, but it's the cheapest source of retirement money there is. The longer you give compounding to do its job, the less of your own paycheck has to fund the destination. The shorter the runway, the more you have to make up for that time out of pocket. John can pick any of these 3 plans. They all land him at the same place. The only question is, which one actually matches what he can live with for as long as it takes? Now here's the thing, this whole video assumed Fidelity is the right provider for John. But is it? I put Fidelity head-to-head against Schwab, $100,000 in each over 30 years. The gap between them was over $1.5 million. That video is on screen right now.